Welcome to Stories of Resilience Encountering Racism. It's on display now at the Grua Center in Stonington, Connecticut. It was originally exhibited at the Lyman Allen Museum. They were the ones that helped us put the exhibit together. The exhibit was done by the Jewish Federation of Eastern Connecticut together with Gibstein Multimedia, Todd Gibstein. The exhibit grew out of a program called Encountering Differences. Encountering Differences was a response to the racial taunts that New London high school athletes were hearing when they visited neighboring towns to play athletic competitions. It was also a response to in-school racial taunts that were happening in high schools around the area. Many, many years ago, Holocaust denial was gaining traction in our country, and the Jewish Federation of Eastern Connecticut established the Holocaust Resource Center, and then a program called Encountering Survivors, where high school students in small groups met with survivors or children of survivors. Based on that framework, we started Encountering Differences, where high school students visit the homes of African Americans to learn their own personal histories. As we sat to conceive of this exhibit, Tom Shook had uncovered the remarkable story of Ichabod Pease. Ichabod Pease led a very full life. He started life as a slave on Fisher's Island. He ran away because his owner was going to go south, and he did not want to go south. He was married to a woman. He ran away and he hid in New London. He was recaptured and given as property to the Deschamps family because his original master owed the Deschamps money. The Deschamps family gave him his emancipation, and we have the emancipation document from 1794 in the city records of the town of New London with John Deschamps' signature. Ichabod Pease was born in 1755. He was emancipated in 1794. He died at age 84, I believe, but before he died, he spent the last years of his life trying to open a school for African American children, Negroes, in New London. And he did this subsequent to the establishment of a similar school by Prudence Crandall in Canterbury, Connecticut. The school lasted only 2 years, but Ichabod Pease, who is buried now in Cedar Grove Cemetery, these are his gravestones, was so well respected in the community that at his funeral at St. James Episcopal Church, more people wanted to be pallbearers than there was room for them to carry the casket. So we learned the story of Ichabod Pease as we were putting together the rest of the exhibit. The exhibit features 3 people who met with students for now 3 years, and 1 person who was on the advisory board. The 3 people who met with the students are Lonnie Braxton, Danetta Hodge, and Florence Clarke, and on the advisory board was Merle Smith. We're going to go through the exhibit now, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about each person. The first person we're going to learn about is Lonnie Braxton. Lonnie Braxton is an attorney. He works for the state in the juvenile court. And right next to the picture of Lonnie is a radio. This shortwave radio was a key in Attorney Braxton's childhood development because, as he says, it opened the world to him. When Lonnie started to practice law in Connecticut, he appeared in court, and 2 times the judge thought that he was the defendant and the person he was defending was the attorney. Why? Because Lonnie was black and the accused criminal was white. Lonnie grew up in Mississippi, and a big part of Lonnie's story is the story of the drive to register people to vote, to gain the right to vote and register people to vote. So down here at the bottom, we have a voters' campaign from December 1st, 1951 to February 1st, 1952 to try and register 5,000 qualified Negro voters. Here we have a KKK card from Connecticut that was left in the courthouse in the men's room by a man that then State Attorney Lonnie Braxton was charging. And on the top of this case, we have the original Ritz Travelogue and the Green Book. There are 2 houses in one, 3 houses in the other that are listed in New London as places where African Americans could stay. The theme for Lonnie Braxton was voting rights. His family was very committed to getting people to vote. And one of the more passionate stories that Lonnie tells is recalling going with his mother to register to vote. And they had to take an exam. They had to apply and take an exam, and the exam was marked by a white person, so obviously many people would be marked as failing. And he remembers his mother trembling as she was about to take this exam. Lonnie's parents were very involved in politics, and they went to the Democratic National Convention, but they had to get guest passes from other states because Mississippi would not allow African Americans to go to the convention as delegates. Here's a poll tax receipt for Lonnie's mother, Lenora Braxton, 1963. In order to vote, you had to pay a poll tax. The last part of Lonnie's exhibit are things from his home that recall his childhood in Mississippi. A bale of cotton, Mississippi sugar, and Mississippi rice. Long grain rice was actually native to Africa, and it was brought here and grown in this country. Lonnie Braxton has many photos of civil rights leaders in his office, but the one he's most proud of is this signature, "Best Wishes, Martin Luther King," that he got while taking a picture of Dr. King when he was speaking in Atlanta. I spoke about the radio and how important it was for opening up his life. This is a relic of part of Lonnie's family that goes back to the slaves that are his ancestors. One of his slaves, ancestors, the great uncle of Lonnie Braxton's father, Great Cooper, learned the trade of blacksmithing and was rented out to other farms. And this is the anvil that he brought with him. This is just about the heaviest piece we have in the exhibit. That was really something. The next person who participated in our program and who is represented in this exhibit is Danetta Hodge. The theme of Danetta Hodge is the Great Migration North. But let me tell you a little bit about Danetta to begin with. Like Lonnie, and like Florence, and like Merle Smith, all of these people were involved in the US military. Danetta was coming north with her father and mother because her father was relocated to the sub-base in Groton. In order to take that journey, she remembers standing at the back of the car and not understanding why they were packing cans of food, toilet paper, and gasoline, and why they had a green book. And the answer was, on their journey north, they would not be allowed to go into restaurants. They would not be allowed to stop at most gas stations and use the facilities or buy gasoline. So the car had to be loaded with all these supplies in order to get north. Now think about this. They were going north to work as a member of the Navy at a naval substation in Groton, but they couldn't travel like anybody else. Danetta, as a child, witnessed a cross burning at her great aunt's house in Swifton, Arkansas. When she saw this burning, she actually thought as a child that they were enacting a biblical scene because she saw the cross. She was snatched away from the window and taken away from the outside of the house because, in fact, part of the house actually caught fire. Danetta put herself through Mitchell College and got an AB. She went on to get a BS, and she went on to get an MBA. She worked for Tunxia Sportswear in New London, then the Redevelopment Agency, and then the Defense Contract Audit Agency, before finally joining Sonalysts in 1987, where she had a full career and acted as an affirmative action officer trying to recruit minorities to the company. She traveled around the country encouraging African American students to major in the sciences and math. She serves today on the board of directors of Sonalysts and on the board of the Dr. Martin Luther King Scholarship Fund. Okay, one of the reasons we want students to visit in the homes of the mentors is for them to pick up the culture of each family. This is a Gullah Basket woven in Charleston, South Carolina, by the descendants of the slaves. This is a book of Luke written in Gullah. The poverty that the children grew up in was such that they had to make dolls on their own. And they would take a Coke bottle, braid hair, and put a face in it, And that's how they made a doll for themselves. And they had their own cuisine. The last interesting piece of Danetta's exhibit is this quilt, which was knit by all of the people that came to rally around her grandmother as her grandmother lay ill and was suffering from a chronic illness. And each person that came would add a square to the quilt. The third of our three mentors that met with students is Florence Clarke. Florence came from Charleston, South Carolina. The theme of her exhibit is civil rights. She marched and participated in sit-ins in Orangeburg, South Carolina, where she was going to South Carolina State University. In fact, she marched in marches organized by Jim Clyburn, who is now a representative and the whip in the U.S. House of Representatives for the Democratic Party. They were arrested en masse, it was a mass arrest, and locked inside the fairgrounds of Orangeburg, South Carolina. And to prevent the African Americans from sitting at the luncheonette table, they removed all of the seats from the luncheonette table. Florence, before she went off to school, was very friendly with the young white child. The two of them played together all the time. But when they went off to school, they went to separate schools. Florence had to go to a black school, a school for Negroes, and her friend had to go to a white school. When they met after they had just gone back to school, the friend told her, "I can't play with you anymore because you're an N." Florence was so upset by this that she actually beat the child up. She was so hurt and angry. By the way, when Danetta was at the Nathan Hale School, Danetta also encountered some racial taunting, and she also beat up a child and who was taunting her. And then the child's mother came to school, and Danetta said to the mother and to the principal of the school, "Well, I won't beat him up again unless he calls me names again. And if he calls me names again, I'm going to beat him up again." So we had two very strong women here. And Lonnie Braxton also was quite a resilient young man. And he insisted on making some money, joining some white kids in doing an activity that he was actually thrown out of. These are three people that had remarkable strength. And when we decided to call the exhibit Stories of Resilience, we named it after the amazing actions of Lonnie Braxton, Danetta Hodge, and Florence Clarke, and the incredible resilience of the escaped and then emancipated slave Ichabod Pease. The last person featured in our exhibit is Merle Smith, pictured here with his wife, Linda. Merle was not the first African American to go to the Coast Guard Academy. He was actually the second, but the first student had to leave for medical reasons after 2 years. Merle graduated from the academy, and went on to have a stellar career in the Coast Guard, and then as corporate counsel for General Dynamics. The thing about Merle that's notable is that he played football for the Coast Guard Academy. And he did encounter racial taunts and racial problems at the Coast Guard Academy, but the people that always defended him and protected him were his football teammates. And to this day, many of them are still in touch with each other and friendly. This award, the Pioneer Award, was first given in April 2012 to Merle Smith because of his pioneering role in integrating the Coast Guard Academy. It is now given out to either a student, a professor, or a member of the staff of the Coast Guard Academy for unique and important contributions to diversity at the Academy. President Obama came to a Coast Guard Academy graduation. He issued a letter over here citing the 50th anniversary of Commander Merle Smith's graduation. Here is one of the boats that Merle Smith was the chief officer on, the Point Ellis. And here are the challenge coins, which are given to members of the Coast Guard for unique accomplishments. Merle has finally been recognized by the Coast Guard Academy. They will be naming the Officers Club after Commander Merle Smith. I told you how Lonnie, Danetta, and Florence were all involved in the military. Merle is actually third generation military. His grandfather was in the military, his father was in the military, and he was in the Coast Guard Academy. Merle knew that in order to really advance, he needed to serve in combat. So he manned a boat in Vietnam and received several citations and medals for what he did. Alas, now he is suffering, we think, from his exposure to Agent Orange, and he has Parkinson's and dementia, so he was not quite able to actively participate in this exhibit, but his wife Linda spoke very well for him. And we're glad that we're able to tell this story of integrating the Coast Guard Academy. This exhibit has been visited by students, by adults. It's been difficult for us under the conditions of COVID to get the audience that we really hope to get, but now we are quite sure that the exhibit will again appear once the campus is open at the Coast Guard Academy. If you have any questions about the exhibit, please feel free to contact Tammy Kay at the Jewish Federation of Eastern Connecticut in New London, Connecticut, and she can give you more information. Thank you very much.